took what I want, but you find that everything they've got, you step forwards to my shadow, you are follow in my pattern.
Hi, and welcome to the Ladies' Room. It is spring in the Hamptons, and we are all starting to think about planting our gardens. With the advent of so many genetically modified seeds and vegetables and fruits, a lot of people are starting to plant organic gardens. In California, there is a man named Lee O'Hara. He is the Organic Gardener. He has a website, www.theorganicgardener. When I was in LA, my niece Cindy and her husband Will served a delicious tomato salad, and I was amazed. Where did you get these tomatoes? And Will took me out to the backyard, and there was this little slip of a garden, literally 3 feet by about 12 feet, loaded with tomatoes. He said they got more tomatoes than they could feed their entire neighborhood. And then he gave me a video of the Organic Gardener. He is a master gardener. His name is Lee O'Hara. He is the most charming man. I brought the video back home, and it went on my shelf. And this winter, when Cablevision was down, I came across the video, and I thought, oh, I'll just watch this for a couple of minutes so I can tell them I watched it. It is the most enchanting video. He is the most charming man. He tells you how to begin growing tomatoes from the first little seedlings down through giant plants. You can get 1,700 pounds of tomatoes from 5 plants. It's amazing. It is also extremely inexpensive. He talks about putting coffee grounds around the plants to keep the bugs away and spreading things like Epsom salts around. Very inexpensive. So experienced gardeners are amazed at the difference in their gardens, and first-time gardeners are thrilled to get this information. The video is charming, instructive, and full of great information. So please enjoy Lee O'Hara. This film was, the cameraman was John Keeler, and the editing and graphics were done by Kathy Smith. And you can get on Lee's website and look up anything you want to grow. There's a ton of extra videos and information on his website. So please enjoy the organic tomato. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week. Have a great week. Bye.
My name's Lee O'Hara, and today I'm going to show you how to start tomatoes from seed all the way through planting them into the soil. The first thing you have to decide is what kind of tomatoes you want to grow. Some people like to grow cherry tomatoes, some like Roma tomatoes. There are hundreds of varieties of tomatoes that you can buy already started in containers at the nursery. Decide what kind of seeds you want. Maybe you want several varieties. Now, once they're in the ground, they're going to take 60 to 90 days before you start picking tomatoes, but it's all worthwhile. To begin with, you need to have some kind of containers that you're going to start your seeds in. These are called 6-packs. You can buy vegetables already started in them like this. I've bought vegetables in the past that were started in these containers, and I keep them from year to year. So you need those. You need a potting soil. I use this to start with. Just put a little bit of potting soil in the bottom of the 6-packs. Now these 6-packs, or any of these plant starting containers, have holes in the bottom. That's for the absorption of water up through the bottom, so you never have to water from the top. The next thing I want to show you is how to fill the pot and moisten the soil. I've put it in a bucket so I don't spill too much. Just fill the container right up to the top. This water is lukewarm. Seedlings like warm soil to get started in. Now the water will be absorbed up through the bottom very quickly. This container was very light with just the potting soil in it. It'll soon get very heavy as it absorbs the moisture. Now that's ready to take the seeds. Tomato seeds are very, very little. Drop one seed in each cell. Plant each seed point side down, maybe 1/4 inch, so that it is contact with the soil and stays moist. Now you can see these seeds are pointed. Now when the seed germinates and starts sending out a root, it's going to come out at that pointed end. It's hard to believe they'll grow to plants that weigh 100 pounds. See the point right there, point right there. So push each seed point side down. If we need to, we just tap it over a little bit with the end of a ballpoint pen, and we're good to go. So now we've covered our seeds, and in 5, 6, 7 days, this pot will look like this pot. I planted these actually 5 days ago, exactly the same way. You can see this one just came up this morning, in fact, but this one was the first one up. Generally, I find that the first ones up are going to turn out to be the very best plants. They'll grow bigger and faster. That's why I like to plant, about 20 seeds, and I'll wind up with 7 that I'm actually going to put in the ground. Next, I want to show you how to keep this newly planted seed pot from drying out. You can buy takeout containers that have a plastic cover. The easiest, cheapest thing to do is just use a piece of plastic wrap. Then we'll just cover that. That's going to hold the moisture in, but we want there to be some air circulation. So we'll just poke a couple of holes in the plastic so we get a little, we're not blocking the air, because we've got the holes at the bottom of the container. Now, if you start to see this dry out, you can just put it in your water container and let the moisture be absorbed. Within a half hour, it's going to have all it needs. But you're probably not going to let it dry out, especially if it's covered. You're going to have it in the house where it's a warm and constant temperature. So you should be all right with that. Now, when you do first start to see the seedlings come up, you're going to need to take that off because, of course, they'll be crushed. So we would take that off when we started to see the seedlings come up. Tomatoes need very little moisture. They like to be evenly moist. If we start to see it dry out too much and the tomato starts to wilt, then we would water it. But you have more trouble overwatering tomatoes than underwatering them. If it's warm at night, say 60 degrees or more, I'll leave them outside at night. Or if it's too cold, I'll leave them in the house near a window and they'll get all the sun they need through that. In 4 to 6 weeks, they'll be about this size. And another few weeks, they'll be about this size. We're going to put them in a larger pot and let them get even bigger. Just put a little bit of potting soil in the bottom of the pot. Then I'm going to take the tomatoes that I want to plant. It's got a good diameter stem here, the main stem. The seed leaves, these were the first 2 leaves that came out from the seed. They're called cotyledons. But you can tell a lot about the future health of a plant or the health of a plant by looking at those. If they're good and green and well developed, you know the plant is healthy. So these look good for this stage of the plant. So what we're going to do is just pinch those off about an inch away from the main stem. And we're going to pinch this whole branch off right about an inch away from the main stem. You want to be very careful with tomato roots. You don't want to touch them at all. You don't want to bother them at all. They're very sensitive. And then I'm just going to put that in the bottom of the pot and fill it the rest of the way with soil. I actually use my own dirt, but I know my own dirt is extremely clean and full of nutrients, but it's probably safer to use prepared potting soil. All right, so now you can see it looked like this a few minutes ago. Now we've got it here. Now what's going to happen is roots are going to start forming all the length of that original stem. So we're going to put that in the water again and let it absorb water from the bottom. If we watered from the top, we'd be forcing the air out of the soil, and we don't want to do that. The soil is going to absorb all the moisture it needs after about 20 or 30 minutes. So this is good and heavy now. It's good to go. In a few weeks, depending on your weather, this will be as big or bigger than this. From here, we need to plant it in the soil. And the next thing I'll do is show you how to do that. So the bed was good and hot. I actually had the plastic much tighter around the edges so air couldn't escape. And the temperature in there got to 130, 140 degrees, which will kill any of the old viruses or diseases that might affect the plants. We'll take the plastic up. The point is the soil is very rich, full of nutrients. It's ready to go. The soil is warm. And so we'll remove the plastic. And the next thing I'll show you is the best way to dig up the soil and get the bed really ready for planting. Now this is a drip system. It's very easy to construct one. It's very cheap. I've been using this one for about 20 years in this bed. We'll just throw that aside. It's very flexible stuff, very easy to work with. The next thing we need to do is dig up the soil. And I always use a digging fork for that. With the shovel, I'll cut worms in two. I don't want to do that. I don't want to destroy the worms. Very easy to just turn that over. I just dug this up, a couple of weeks ago, and so I don't have any worms. The soil's gotten pretty dry, and it's been very, very hot. The worms have gone lower. But when I first dug it up, I literally had thousands of earthworms in here. The earthworms produce more nitrogen than any amount of nitrogen you could buy. The best manure there is worm castings. That's all we really need here. Now the next thing we need to do is prepare a trench to take the tomato. And I can see I'm going to need a trench about that long and about that deep. So I'll just move the soil aside. I'm going to need a little bigger hole down at this end. Okay, now the reason I'm going to plant it this way is because by the time the tomato comes out, I'll have a big root ball here where this originally is. I'll have another root ball right under the tomato, and I'll have roots growing all along this stem. That will give 3 or 4 times the root structure that you'll get if you just plant the tomato in the ground just like this. Now, that our hole is ready, I make one little additional thing. I'll put powdered dry milk in with the soil. I'll just use a small handful, spread it around, and kind of mix it in with the soil. The reason for that is the extra calcium and phosphorus that's in the powdered milk. One of the reasons that people get blossom end rot is a condition of a tomato where the blossom end, that is the part away from the stem, the end away from the stem, will turn black and get very hard. It's a big problem to a lot of people. And what causes that is a lack of calcium. The plant can't absorb calcium because the roots are too wet, and they're kept too wet and cold. So it inhibits the plant from being able to absorb calcium. So it's important to have really good drainage, and you can see this soil is going to have very good drainage. It's very loose, not compacted at all. It's full of nutrients. I put a little extra calcium in there just to make sure that I don't have any problems. So for the next 2 or 3 months, I'll give it 2 or 3 feedings of powdered milk. After the plant's been in the ground for a month, I'll mix a little handful in a 3 or 5 gallon bucket and pour that over the base of the plant 2 or 3 times. And it seems to really help the plants. That's the only exception I made to my rule of never feeding a plant. I only feed the soil. So I think adding the calcium and phosphorus is feeding the soil as well. But it really seems to help the plants. From the 7 plants, I'll never, I might lose 1 or 2 at the very end of the season to blossom end rot. But out of 1,800 tomatoes, that isn't bad. But I'll never have a problem with that because of the calcium and the good drainage. So we've got the powdered milk mixed in there. All right, this is a plant that's ready to go in the ground now. These little sprouts that start and grow between the main branches, like this would be a sucker, that would be a sucker. The old mythology is that you should pinch those off when you see them. There's no reason at all, and I think it's been proven scientifically. I've proven it years ago myself. If you just let them go, they're going to provide shade for the tomatoes. You won't get sunburned tomatoes. It provides a lot of shade for the plant. They do no harm at all. The extra foliage, I think, makes the plant stronger and bigger. So I never pinch off the suckers. I'm pinching off the leaves about 1 inch away from the main stem. The reason that I'm doing that is that everywhere I've pinched off, roots will grow out. And again, I'll have a root ball here, I'll have a root ball here, and I'll have roots growing all along the stem, so I'll have a tremendous root system. So what we're going to do next is just take it out of the pot. The way to do that, again, you never want to disturb your tomato plant roots. You don't want them exposed to the air, you don't want to touch them, you don't want to break up the soil at all. So I'll just lay that here, pull it out like that. You can see all these roots. That's going to take off really well. None of the roots are balled up. It's not overgrown. So we'll just gently cover the soil back over it. Make sure that root ball is well covered. Just kind of push the dirt up under. In 2 or 3 days, that's going to be going straight up. We've got a beautiful root ball started here. Within a week or 2 or 3, we're going to have a big root ball right under this. And we've got roots that will be coming out all along that original stem. Now, there's one more thing we have to do here. And maybe you can see these buds. You just want to pinch those buds off. I don't want any fruit to start forming. I don't want it to start blossoming. I don't want anything happening with the plant except the plant growing strong until the plant's up, 2 or 3 feet high. When the plant's off to a really good start, then I'll stop pinching off the blossoms. Like any flower, any other plant, when you pinch off the buds and flowers, it causes the plant to create more of them. And I'm forcing it to create more blossoms, which is going to give me more fruit ultimately. Now the next thing we need to do is protect the plant from, its enemies, things that will destroy it or make its life miserable. And some of those are slugs, aphids, ants. Ants won't actually hurt the plant, but they will take care of the aphids and protect them and herd them. Without the ants, the lacewings and ladybugs will eat the aphids. So aphids never should be a problem if you can control the ants. To handle the ants, just cornmeal. Ants can't digest cornmeal, but they take it back to the nest, and the queen eats it, and other ants eat it, and it kills them. So if I had an ant hill here, I would just pile up a little bit of it like that at the ant hill, and within a few days or a week, there will be no more ants. So just as a precaution, I put a ring of cornmeal around that. Another problem that I sometimes have is with slugs or snails. They don't bother a plant once it gets started a bit, but in the beginning they might. So one of the things that you can use for that is just used coffee grounds. Any coffee shop will give them to people because organic gardeners use it. Primarily it's used for nitrogen and compost. It adds a lot to compost, but it'll also kill slugs. It's poison to them. And it adds a little bit of nitrogen to the soil. Another thing I've got is diatomaceous earth. It's called DE. Diatoms are two-celled sea creatures, little seashells. And if slugs or snails crawl across that, it cuts them and they die of dehydration. So that will further take care of sow bugs, takes care of fleas and a variety of insects. In addition, it adds about 11 different trace minerals back to the soil. So it's a real good soil addition in and of itself. I very often dig in quite a lot of that when I'm getting my beds ready. It's inexpensive, purely organic. So we've got 3 really terrific organic pest controls here. Coffee grounds, we've got the cornmeal, and we've got the diatomaceous earth. You can kind of see that's just moist. It doesn't form a mud ball, but it kind of breaks up very easily. That's what you would call evenly moist. The ideal soil conditions for tomatoes is that the temperature of the soil is 75 to 85 degrees, and it's moist like that all over. So we want to keep it that way. One of the ways to do that is with mulch. Now, I ordinarily use alfalfa hay, but I couldn't get it this year, so I'm just using wheat straw. And it doesn't have the nutrients that alfalfa does, but it'll serve the purpose as a mulch. Now you can see I've left plenty of room for the air. I haven't tried to make a thick mat. That will go a long way toward preserving the moisture, stopping moisture loss. It'll hold the moisture in to a large degree, and it'll help keep the soil at a more constant temperature. Now I've got a drip system in all my beds, and I put in faucets in each individual beds, but you don't have to do that. You could actually just connect this directly to a garden hose. It's my hobby. I went to great lengths. So, okay, so that's That's the drip system. And these have little holes about every 6 inches along the drip line. Now my soil is very porous, so I have to put them about every 6 inches apart. If your soil is dense, you might need to only put these a foot apart. Just the right amount of water is important. Now, there are a lot of varying ideas and beliefs about the best way to water tomatoes. Some people want to let them dry out completely before they water, and then they want to saturate the soil. What I've always done is just try to keep it just evenly moist. I don't let it dry out. I don't saturate it. Typically, in normal summer weather that we have here, I'll just turn it on for 15 minutes about every other day works for me. But it depends on your soil and your garden and your weather. The drip system was invented by the Israelis. Of course, it's desert and water is very hard to come by. So they invented this many years ago as the most efficient and best method for watering. And it is. The water goes right to the roots of the plant. You don't get water on the leaves, which makes a breeding ground for fungi and molds. So you're keeping your leaves dry. You're just moistening the soil. Okay. The next thing we need to know about protecting the growing tomato, the tomato plant itself, is Bacillus thuringiensis. It's commonly called BT. Put a little in a quart. Now, this will kill any kind of the green worms, the ones that eat the foliage. This strain is the Kerstaki. This is what is the safest, absolutely the safest and best to use. It's completely harmless to people or animals. So I'll just mix about, just a little bit, maybe a teaspoon in that quart of water. There we go. Now this bed is about 80 square feet. Just 2 weeks ago tomorrow, in fact, I planted them. So what we have to do now, the only other problem I might have from this point on is green caterpillars, tomato hornworms, cabbage loopers, whatever kind of green caterpillars eat the foliage, the BT, Bacillus thuringiensis, will take care of. So at about this stage, I want to start spraying them. It doesn't take much. Being 32 billion in the bottle, I'm probably getting several million on each squirt here. So we'll just give them a little spray. So that's about all that's necessary here. Unless I happen to see a lot of butterflies, moths, whatever, then I might spray them every week. Once every week or two, we'll do it. And you can see we've used very little. The last thing I do is just keep these buds pinched off until the plant gets up to, about 2 feet high. So when the plant is up to here, I'll stop pinching the buds off because I'll know the plants have gotten off to a really good start. They won't be putting all that energy into creating fruit at this stage. And these Beefmasters are a very large tomato. They'll soon fill these cages and in fact grow back over the top. And I've had them grow all the way to the concrete. I usually keep them cut off somewhere in here, but each of them will produce over 100 pounds. Last year they produced 120 pounds per plant. And that's all we have to do now except keep them watered and let them grow, and in a couple of months we'll pick tomatoes. I get a lot of questions from people from all over the world on organic gardening, and please don't hesitate to write to me at organichomegardener.com.
Thank you.